Okay, so first and foremost, so here's some strategies for you to talk about for increasing your income. So strategy number one we're going to talk about is maybe something you want to do is maybe you want to convert some of your properties into short-term rentals. Okay. I was having a wonderful conversation with one of my clients out in the Okanagan, and she was sharing with me, I think I might get the number a little bit off, but I'm going to be pretty general here, pretty close. She generated $35,000 on one of her short-term rentals in the Penticton marketplace, $35,000 in only 5 months. Okay. And she said that that would have equaled out to what she probably could have got for an entire year. So she generated her entire year's straight tenant rental in 5 months. So now everything that she's going to be doing from here for the next 7 months of the 12-month cycle she's going to do is gravy to this. So short-term rentals. Or another conversation I was having with a wonderful colleague of mine, I think she has 18 short-term rentals, and she's targeting places in the Fraser Valley of workers that are on working on the Trans Mountain Pipeline, and she's doing phenomenally well with them. 9 of them she owns, and 9 of them she arbitrages. Now, I'm not going to get into too many details about that, but maybe I'll ask her to come on my YouTube channel and podcast to share what she does and how well she's doing with her short-term rental business. Like, it's doing phenomenally well. All right, so that's short-term rentals as a strategy. In and of itself, like I said, remember time and expertise. That could be an expertise you need to learn, but it could very well be a strategy you want to look at. Furnished units at the same time. Maybe you don't want to go to short-term. Maybe you want to go furnished, like my good friend Derek Peaver. And if you've listened to my podcast or YouTube channel, you've seen a lot of information. Derek's been on there multiple times of how well he's doing on his furnished units. And I think he's getting like $6,000 plus in some of his furnished units on his on his executive rentals, corporate rentals, relocation, and in-betweeners, as he calls. I'd encourage new construction is a really good thing to take a look at too during this time, because it cuts down some of your cost, which we'll talk about later. But importantly, it's actually a new property does get more rent than a resale property. So new construction properties do very, very well. That's one of my favorite ones as well. And maybe at this time, maybe you need to start pivoting your market. Maybe you need to start looking at a different marketplace. Maybe the market that you're in is you've capped out on your rents, and your 2.5% rental increase next year isn't going to quite cut it for this foreseeable future, aka all you BC investors. Shh, right? So if you're out there and you can't raise your rents to keep up with your costs, maybe you need to start divesting of your marketplace and getting into a different market. So maybe you need to start pivoting your marketplace. All right. So, and then a couple more strategies you want to take a look at here as well. So the next one is maybe you want to consider doing a rent to own. Maybe there's a property that you're thinking about that you do want to sell it. Maybe you approach the tenant that's in there right now and you approach them, maybe they want to buy it. Or maybe you put it on the market as a rent to own property. So you put it on the market as a rent to own, you have somebody come in with a deposit, you have somebody come in with a rent plus also an option to purchase, plus you also can cut your expenses a lot. You potentially don't have to manage it. You potentially don't have the maintenance costs. Now, understand pros and cons to all of this is you are now putting your property up for sale, but it could be a cash flow enhancer while you're waiting to potentially sell a property you want to sell. Maybe you want to look at student rentals. Maybe you just have shied away from student rentals in the past because you were doing really well with your straight rentals and your cash flow was really well and complacency was really good. And, why would I want to do a hassle of student rentals? Maybe just lean in and do some student rentals for the short term. And then the last two things I'm going to mention here, these ones are, they can be a little, what would be the best word? They can be a little confrontational, or they can be a little controversial. Maybe let's talk about this. So what I would encourage you, number one, is to raise your rents. Where you are in your jurisdiction, for example, if you're in Ontario, I think Ontario's next year is 2%, BC's 2.5%, take them, right? So increase your rents as a starting point. $63 is still better than zero. Okay. It all adds up. It all makes a difference. So make sure you do raise your rents. The next thing is, or for example, like I said, pivot market, another jurisdiction. I know I've taken, in some cases, I've taken 10% increases on my rentals because I'm in Alberta and we don't have rent controls out in Alberta with my rentals. And in some cases, anytime a tenant has left, I bumped it up to marketplace and it went up even more. So make sure you're at market and study your market. The next is negotiate with your clients, like negotiate with the tenants. What does that mean? Like it could mean as follows. It could mean cash for keys, which is, fairly controversial, right? You could potentially go to the tenant and sit there and go, look, I would like to buy you out. I would like to offer you some money. And if you sign this form that you're leaving and stuff like that. So that's one way, is negotiate with the tenants. Or one of the things that I've helped some of my clients do of late is I've helped them when they're negotiating is just open a conversation with your tenants. And the conversation could go as something as the following. Is number one is, I'm thinking, I'm not sure what I want to do with this rental property. I'm actually thinking that I might sell it. I just want to know you, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, what is your intention? What are you looking, what is your long-term intention? Do you want to keep staying here or are you looking to buy? Like, what is your intention? Because I'm thinking about maybe putting the house up for sale. And then just listen to the tenant. Listen to them. Find out, maybe you might find out, like one of my clients out in St. Catharines, he had that conversation with his tenants and he found out the tenant was wanting to leave and the tenant left within a month. Right. And if he didn't, he just opened up the conversation with them. And he's now getting, I think he's getting $1,000 more on the re-rental. Or another one of my clients out in Ontario had that conversation with the tenant and the tenant said, you know what? I want to stay. I love it here. I want to stay. And then one of my clients said, well, you know what? I'm still thinking about potentially renting. I'm going to have a realtor come through. We're going to do a walkthrough. We're going to get an assessment. And then a couple months have gone by and they were serious that they were going to sell it. They listed it. The realtor came by and eventually the tenant just said, and they're serious about selling it. They were really serious about selling it. However, they haven't had an offer yet, but the tenant has just kind of said, you know what, we're going to move out. So I think it was 3 months after, three months after the tenant has now moved out. And now my client is still interested in selling. They've priced it appropriately, but if it doesn't sell in the market, they're not going to give it away. So then they're going to re-rent. And I think their next tenant that's coming in will, if they choose to re-rent, they're right in the middle of selling it. If the next tenant comes in, will probably be another $600 more a month. So make sure you check your strategy, raise your rents if you get that opportunity. A couple other things too is these are what I would call rental enhancers that I want you to fully engage here. So rental enhancer number one would be parking. Do you have an opportunity to add some parking? Maybe charge for parking. Maybe you're in an area that has no parking available whatsoever and you can start charging for the parking. One of my clients in Saskatoon, he has a student rental and he had an opportunity to add, I think it was 3 more parking stalls, 2 or 3. For sure 2, I think it was 3. And he was going to get another $75 to $100 a month. So if that's another almost $300, there's $3,600 more there by just adding in a few more parking spots. Okay. Adding a shed. Like one of my clients shared a strategy is what they had was they had a garage and then the tenant was leaving and then a new tenant was moving in. And what they did was they put a shed on there for the tenant to store all their stuff in the shed. And then they rented out the garage separately. Okay. Or like I said, garage, maybe there's an opportunity for you to rent out the garage. Now there's pros and cons. Like I said, always pros and cons to everything if this works for you or not. I sure hope you enjoyed that segment from our recent podcast episode. If you don't want to miss any of the upcoming episodes, a couple simple steps from here. Number 1, subscribe. Hit that bell notification button. And if you're interested in watching a few more segments from that episode, there'll be a link up here. Or if you'd like to watch a playlist of all the long form episodes of the podcast, there'll be a link down here. All right, gang, let's go.